Hey guys, tonight we're slipping quietly into the marble bones of Vatican City. You're walking alone past St. Peter's at midnight, but something beneath your feet feels alive. There are whispers in the walls, rooms that don't show on blueprints, and somewhere deep below, records no outsider has touched in centuries. You take a step forward, the floor creaks, and suddenly, you're not sure if this place was meant to be seen at all. Now, let's ease into tonight's journey together. You move slowly, the stone cool under your fingertips. The night air is heavy with the scent of old incense and cold iron. The city sleeps, but the Vatican never truly does. You follow the faint outline of a corridor. No signs, no guards. Only the silence that feels too full, too watchful. Beneath your shoes is more than just limestone. What few people realize is that the Vatican, as you see it on the surface, is just the tip of something older, deeper, stranger. Below lies a labyrinth of chambers, tombs, catacombs, and tunnels, some documented, others not so much. You descend narrow stairs, rough-hewn into the earth long before the Renaissance. Your fingers trail along the walls, feeling the shift from marble to rough brick, from order to chaos. These are not tourist routes. There's no Latin plaque here explaining who lies buried. You're somewhere beneath the Vatican necropolis. Yes, the real city of the dead. Mainstream historians agree that the necropolis under St. Peter's Basilica dates back to the 1st century. Roman mausoleums, Christian tombs, and early shrines line this underworld like veins beneath the surface. But not all is mapped. Not all is open. Some corridors are sealed off with iron gates, welded shut, and nobody really explains why. Some whisper that beyond those sealed paths lie chambers filled with relics never recorded in church inventory. Icons of saints who were never canonized, or worse, of figures whose existence the church actively denies. Fringe researchers claim that deeper still is a buried structure predating Christianity entirely, possibly Etruscan or even older. Of course, the Vatican has never confirmed this, but you can't help noticing the slight downward draft of air coming from a wall that shouldn't breathe. You pause in a narrow passage lit only by your flashlight. In front of you, a stone slab etched with a faded symbol, one you swear you saw in a museum catalog once. The Eye of Mithras? A pagan god worshipped by Roman soldiers, whose rites included underground rituals. Sound familiar? You lean in and hear a sound. Not a voice. Not exactly. More like movement. Slow. Purposeful. You tell yourself it's the settling of ancient stone, but you're not convinced. Historians still argue whether the Vatican's undercity was built deliberately to conceal secrets, or whether the secrets emerged naturally as layers of centuries built upon one another. But it's hard to believe it was accidental, especially when every sealed chamber seems to align with astronomical events or biblical symbolism. One corridor, known only to certain archivists, is said to run directly beneath the Sistine Chapel. It's off limits, structurally unsafe, officially. But an anonymous Vatican engineer once described a carved doorway there, sealed in lead, without handle or lock. Just a sunburst pattern surrounded by Latin scripture that doesn't appear in any Bible. You continue down another staircase. The air grows stale metallic. A faint hum reaches your ears, at first almost imagined, but growing. Not mechanical, vibrational, like chanting slowed 1,000-fold. You tell yourself it's your imagination. You lie. A mainstream fact that tourists love. St. Peter's bones are said to rest beneath the Basilica, identified by centuries of excavation and authentication. But what they don't tell you is that other bones have been found nearby, ones that didn't match any apostle or any human of known record, some with elongated skulls, filed teeth. The official reports refer to them as distorted relics. That's about as far as the explanation goes. You press on, each turn in the tunnel somehow colder than the last. Behind you, nothing. But you can't shake the feeling that you're being escorted. Not chased, not welcomed, just observed, like the walls themselves are taking note of you. Suddenly, the passage opens into a chamber. Round, domed ceiling. No marquins, No statues. Only a perfectly flat altar-like slab in the center, black as obsidian. You walk toward it, drawn despite every rational instinct. Dust coats the surface except for one spot. A small square of clean stone, like something was removed recently. You retrace your steps from the obsidian slab, heart steady but breath slow, like your body is trying not to make a sound it doesn't have to. The passage narrows behind you, and you almost have to turn sideways to pass. Stone rubs your shoulder gently, like a warning. You climb back toward a new level, higher but no less hidden. There, tucked behind a faded curtain of leather, a door. Thick wood, scorched at the edges. No handle, only a small plaque with 2 Latin words, Archivum Secretum. The secret archive. The stuff of Dan Brown novels and late-night conspiracy forums. Except you're standing right outside it. Most people don't realize that the Vatican Secret Archive, now renamed the Vatican Apostolic Archive, houses one of the largest collections of historical documents on Earth. Over 50 miles of shelving. That's more than Harvard's Widener Library. But here's the twist. Only a tiny fraction of these documents has ever been seen by anyone outside the church. You press gently on the door. It doesn't budge. You lean in. It's cool to the touch, unnaturally so. The kind of cool that makes you wonder if something inside is pulling heat from the world around it. And then, faintly, you hear it. Rustling. Not rats. Not air. Pages. Turning. Historians still argue whether the strict control over these documents is merely bureaucratic caution or something more selective. The Vatican claims the archive is closed to protect the documents, not the reader. But if that's true, why are entire collections, like the letters of Pope Pius XII during World War II, kept sealed for decades, long after the world demanded answers? You find a side route, a maintenance shaft, barely wide enough to crawl through, but it curves behind the archive's lower level. You push forward, brushing past cobwebs that seem too thick, too methodically woven. You emerge into a side alcove, dim, dry, and lined with cabinets. You crack one open. Inside, a stack of parchment bound in faded twine. You pull the top document. It's dated 1493. A letter, addressed not to a king, not to a cardinal, but to the Grand Master of the Knights Templar. Signed by Rodrigo Borgia, Pope Alexander VI. The letter details a transaction, land, wealth, and something referred to only as the sealed relic of Saint Veronica. The language is vague, cautious, but one line catches your breath. Should the relic ever be unwrapped, the bearer must not gaze directly into its thread. You blink, reread, set it down gently. That's enough of that one. Mainstream scholars have confirmed the archive houses communications about the Inquisition, the Crusades, and the trial of Galileo. But what isn't confirmed, what's never allowed to be confirmed, are the so-called non-canon texts. Gospels that tell a different story of Christ. Letters that suggest a female disciple at the Last Supper. Scrolls that place Jesus in Egypt long after the resurrection. One folder you find is labeled simply Codex, Lux Tenebris, the light of darkness. You open it, expecting more Latin, but instead, the pages are black, embossed with silver ink. Not handwritten, burned. The words shimmer faintly. And though you don't recognize the symbols, you understand one thing. This wasn't meant for public eyes. You hear a footstep, or maybe not. Maybe it's just the archive settling again. But your pulse kicks up. You close the folder carefully. Slide it back. Take nothing with you. That's the rule down here, right? Quirky fact. Napoleon once tried to seize the archive and haul it back to Paris in 1810. He managed to get some crates out before the Vatican sealed off the rest. Historians retrieved them years later, still unopened. Some are filled with books, others with bones. You exit the alcove. The air is drier here, more brittle. You pass a stone wall inscribed with an inventory list, entire shelves numbered and labeled Prohibita. You know that word. Prohibited. Banned. And just beneath that, Templum Saturni. The Temple of Saturn. Not a Catholic site. Not even Christian. You begin to realize something. The Vatican Archive isn't just about keeping secrets. It's about collecting them. about preserving history, not just to honor it, but maybe to control it. You pass another chamber. Inside, a globe. Brass, ancient, but not of Earth. There are oceans, but they're wrong. Continents shaped like dreams. A tiny placard reads Mappa Mundi, Fragmentum X. You stare and quietly wonder if this is a map of a world that came before ours. Your flashlight dims slightly, enough to unsettle. You move toward the exit. Your mind buzzes, not with fear, but with a strange kind of reverence. There are places that you emerge from the shadows of the archive, the echo of forbidden pages still brushing the edge of your thoughts. The torchlight feels warmer now, but your steps are slower, more measured. Something about touching those pages, even for a moment, has changed how you see these halls. They no longer feel like corridors. They feel like arteries. You round a corner and arrive at a sealed chamber. No lock, no handle. Just an inscription in Latin. Lingui morti servant veritatem. Dead languages keep the truth. The Vatican is home to one of the largest collections of extinct languages in the world. From Coptic to Old Syriac, from Proto-Hebrew to forgotten dialects of the Anatolian hills. The texts stored here aren't just unreadable, they're undeciphered. In fact, whole shelves are filled with codices no living linguist has translated. And the church doesn't seem eager to try. You pass a glass case. Inside lies a single leaf of parchment, burned at the edges, labeled simply Gospel of the Serpent. You stare, tracing the flowing characters, thin and angular like thorns. No translation offered. No commentary. Just a warning. Non palato lectori. Not for the casual reader. Historians still argue whether these texts are theological diversions, ancient forgeries, or remnants of suppressed sections. But the Vatican's refusal to release them for study only deepens the mystery. Why preserve something if it's false? Why protect a lie? You move on. Another chamber opens, this one round, with a skylight that funnels moonlight onto a circular desk. Scrolls lie open, weighed down by metal rings. You pick one at random. It's written in an alphabet that slants sharply upward, like it's always climbing toward heaven. No vowels, no punctuation, just flow. But your fingers stop at the margins. Doodles, not childlike, more like ritual diagrams. A human figure upside down, flanked by stars. A tree with roots above and branches below. A sword with no hilt. And beneath them, a phrase scrawled in Latin. Non omnis moriar. I shall not wholly die. You set it down. You feel the weight of the parchment linger on your hands, like ash. Quirky detail. Some of the Vatican's oldest codices are believed to be written in languages that precede known human scripts. A few fringe scholars suggest that they are transcriptions rather than original writings, copies of messages from an older source, something non-human. You hear footsteps above, monks perhaps, beginning their nightly prayers. The chant echoes faintly, but the words are clearer than expected. Adli, familiar. You recognize the cadence, not because you've heard the hymn before, but because it matches the rhythm of the scroll. The chant follows the same strange upward spiral, as if the building itself is repeating a prayer far older than Christianity. You sit on the stone floor, staring up at the dome above. The stars twinkle beyond the oculus like forgotten eyes. And for a moment, you feel small, not from fear, but from a sense that you're standing beneath a language so old it doesn't speak to you. It speaks around you. And maybe that's the secret of the dead languages. They're not just lost, they're listening. You rise slowly from the stone floor, legs tingling with the cold that has crept into your bones. But it's not just the temperature, it's the residue of presence. Like something ancient brushed past your soul and left fingerprints. You steady yourself and continue forward. The tunnel opens into another corridor, but this one is narrower, darker, lined with wooden cabinets bolted shut. One cabinet is labeled in crisp, red ink, Dossier Exorcismus. You pause. There's no mistaking that word. The Vatican has long denied public access to its official exorcism records. Yes, priests are trained in the rite. Yes, the Church approves certain individuals to perform them. But what's not spoken aloud is how many cases pass through these halls. How many are quietly recorded, and how many are never truly resolved. You unfasten the latch, breath held without realizing. Inside, folders, dozens of them, each labeled with initials, dates, locations. No full names, no taídic inclusions, just accounts, raw, sometimes frantic, always clinical. Each one begins the same way. Suspicion of preternatural influence. You leaf through one from 1967, a village in southern Italy. A 14-year-old girl, behavioral changes, inexplicable knowledge of ancient Sumerian. 3 priests assigned, 1 hospitalized. The report ends abruptly, sealed with a cardinal stamp. No further notes. Another file is older. 1894, Bavaria. A widow. 6 children claim to see a black mouth inside her face. Attempts at cleansing failed. Her body was later found in a chapel, seated upright, eyes burned out. The official report. Spontaneous ocular combustion. You close the file. Your fingers are trembling now. Mainstream historians acknowledge the Church's long history with exorcism rites. They even teach parts of the Rituale Romanum in theological programs. But no one outside these walls has read this version. This one includes handwritten additions in the margins, updates, warnings, and, in one case, a note in English. Never proceed without light. You walk farther into the chamber. Here the air feels off. Not colder, not warmer, just charged, like the kind of atmosphere before lightning strikes. You pass a display case. Inside, a crucifix cracked down the center. A brass plaque reads, "Bent during St. Gervasio's rite, 1831." There's no description of what bent it. Historians still debate whether the Church's involvement in exorcisms is rooted in spiritual conviction or psychological necessity. But these files suggest a third possibility: containment. Not to heal, but to trap. You stop at one final folder. It's newer, dated just 10 years ago. The report is short. A monastery in Eastern Europe. A novice priest who disappeared after performing a solo exorcism. Found 3 days later, wandering a forest barefoot, repeating a phrase that couldn't be identified by any linguist. Not Latin, not Greek, just a phonetic transcription. Asmara, deathy, 6 look. One marginal note. Same phrase heard in 1439 and 1754. Your hands are suddenly cold. The folder slips slightly in your grasp. You back out of the chamber. You've seen enough, but something follows. Not a figure, a pressure, a feeling just behind your shoulder. The weight of attention. The knowledge that what's in those records isn't just history, it's still echoing. Quirki detail. The Vatican employs a department known as the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. Officially, it oversees doctrine and faith practice. Unofficially, some believe it also monitors ongoing cases, the ones that never quite end, the ones that call back. The corridor narrows again. Your footsteps echo strangely, like the sound is being pulled inward, devoured by the walls. You look back once, just once. Nothing there, but you still walk faster. You ascend a small flight of stairs. At the top is a sealed wooden door. Carved into it, a single Latin phrase, far older than the others. Demons scient nomen tuum. The demons know your name. You stare at the carved words longer than you mean to. Demons scient nomen tuum. The demons know your name. Not a name. Not his name. Your name. You push the door open with both hands, and it groans like something not meant to be disturbed. The chamber beyond is circular, lit only by the bluish glow of moonlight filtered through stained glass. No crucifixes, no pius. Just one thing in the center, a marble pedestal, waist-high, holding a scroll encased in glass. Above it, a simple inscription, Fatima tertia, non publicitur. The third Fatima, do not publish. Your breath hitches. The three secrets of Fatima. Officially, the first two were visions received by three shepherd children in Portugal in 1917. Prophecies about war, the rise of communism, and the salvation of souls. The third, however, remained secret for decades. When the Vatican released it in 2000, skeptics worldwide agreed something was off. The version made public? A vision of a bishop in white, shot down among ruins. But even devout Catholics noticed the absence of direct words from the Virgin Mary, unlike the earlier secrets. Just imagery, vague, almost sanitized. And now, standing here, you realize that version may not have been the full truth. The case is sealed, but beside it lies a journal, aged, handwritten, the edges flaking like pastry. It belonged to Cardinal Ottaviani, an early keeper of the Fatima documents. His notes described the third secret not as a vision, but a warning. A message spoken aloud to Lucia, the surviving seer. A prophecy of spiritual deception originating from within the very walls of the Holy See. You flip another page. His hand is shakier here. He references an impostor enthroned and a great silence forced by oath. Then the ink smudges, whether from time or trembling fingers, you don't know. Historians still argue whether the full third secret has ever been released. Some say only the imagery was revealed, while the accompanying words remain sealed. Others insist the Vatican withheld it entirely, fearing mass panic or loss of faith. The chamber suddenly feels colder. Not hostile, just aware. You glance up. In the dome above, a faded fresco. You hadn't noticed it before. A robed figure, faceless, stands on a burning bridge, hands outstretched. Beneath the bridge, people drowning in gold. Not fire, not water, gold. Their faces peaceful, smiling, unmoving. You return your eyes to the pedestal. That scroll, if real, could be one of the most controversial documents in Catholic history. A direct voice from the divine, silenced. Quirky side note, the Pope, upon receiving the third secret, traditionally reads it alone in a private chapel. Some popes are said to have wept. One, according to unconfirmed reports, refused to finish reading it and placed it back in the envelope unread. You reach out, fingertips nearly brushing the glass case. Then stop, not from fear, but from the growing sense that this isn't meant to be seen all at once. That the truth is layered, and exposing it too quickly might unravel more than it reveals. You look around the room once more. No doors, no exit. But then, in the floor's center, a brass ring, etched with an arrow pointing north. You press it. With a soft hiss, a hidden panel opens. Beneath it, stone stairs spiral downward into even deeper silence. As you descend, you hear a sound, not of footsteps, not of voices. A slow, deep humming, like a choir breathing through the earth itself. And somewhere below you, the rest of the prophecy waits. The stone spiral curls downward, tight as a question mark, the air growing thick with the smell of mineral damp and something else. Incense, maybe, or time. Your fingers graze the wall as you descend. It feels warmer here, odd, given how deep underground you must be by now. The light above has vanished entirely, but somehow the darkness isn't absolute. It hums. The stairs end in a stone antechamber, unadorned, empty save for a doorway flanked by two statues. Angels, but not like any you've seen. These ones were no robes, no wings, just sharp, serene faces, their hands resting on swords turned upside down. One angel has no eyes, smooth stone where pupils should be. The other, no mouth. The message is unclear and chilling. You pass between them, and there it is, a chamber of judgment. The walls curve gently, and in the center is a long wooden table. 7 chairs, arranged precisely, as if waiting for occupants who've been gone for centuries or haven't arrived yet. At the far end, under glass, lies a manuscript. The cover alone is enough to freeze your breath. A soft leather hide, marked with symbols not etched or painted, but scarred. Burned in, the center bears a sigil, 3 overlapping keys within a triangle, each key pointing inward. You open the case and gently lift the cover. This is the room where Galileo Galilei stood, where the church pronounced his heliocentric view heresy, where science and faith collided not in open war, but in carefully measured ceremony. Mainstream history agrees that in 1633, Galileo was tried here, forced to recant under threat of torture. But the full records? The transcripts? Not everything made it into the public archive. You flip a page. The ink is thick, dark, too fresh looking for something this old. But the words are familiar, Latin, crisp, and angry. It's a record of the interrogation, not the sanitized one quoted in textbooks. This one is Messier, real. Galileo asks not to be judged on scripture, but on what the heavens themselves have shown him. The margin notes are disturbing. In a different hand, someone has scribbled, "He sees further than he should." Another line is scratched so deeply it tears the page. Stellum negavit crucem. He denies the cross for the stars. You pause. That phrase never appeared in the official trial. You continue reading. There's talk of a separate document, Instrumentum Celestis, which Galileo allegedly possessed. A star map, handed down from earlier mystics, showing not just planetary motion, but planetary migration. Worlds shifting places, as if the heavens were designed. Historians still debate whether Galileo ever recanted freely, or whether what he said under oath was simply theater. What they don't debate, but what is rarely acknowledged, is the rumor that a copy of his telescope remains buried here, sealed in lead, because its lenses were said to reveal things not visible to ordinary glass. You turn another page. It's blank, but as you tilt it toward the soft light leaking from an unseen source, a faint shimmer appears, silver ink, only visible at an angle. A sketch, a star cluster, but not from our known sky. Below it, in tiny letters, Quod supranos infra est. What is above us is below us. You're suddenly aware of a low vibration through the soles of your feet. A pressure, a rhythm. You step back. The room feels wrong again. No, not wrong. Aware. As though the act of reading this has alerted something. Quirky footnote. The Vatican once hosted a conference in the 1980s titled Faith and the Cosmos. It was small, private, and included theoretical physicists, theologians, and one astrophysicist from Argentina who later claimed he was shown an astronomical manuscript written in a dead tongue. He never published again. The air changes. Behind you, the door creaks shut, not slammed, just decided. You return the manuscript to its case. You sit briefly in one of the 7 chairs. The wood is warm, absurdly warm, as though someone had just risen. The candle on the far wall flares, once, then fades. You stand. You're not supposed to be here, but you're also not being stopped. As you exit the room, your fingers graze the statue of the mouthless angel. This time, you can swear it smiles. The corridor ahead is narrow, quieter somehow, as if the stone itself is holding its breath. You just stepped out of the Galileo chamber, yet the silence that follows you doesn't feel empty. It feels watchful. You descend once more. The steps are smooth from centuries of passage. By whom? You can only guess. This new level feels colder, the air drier. Less sacred, more sealed off. The walls lose their decorative elements. No frescoes, no Latin inscriptions, just bare stone like this part of the Vatican forgot how to pray. At the end of the corridor, another iron gate. Heavier than the others. Reinforced. Your flashlight glints off scratches along its base, deep clawed. You wonder what, or who, try to get in, or out. Beyond this gate lies a lesser-known part of the archive, the vaults of forbidden texts. The Vatican denies such a name officially, but even scholars refer to it by whispered nicknames. Bibliotheca Obscura, Scriptura Damnatio, the Room of Smoke. It said it contained texts so unorthodox, so potentially dangerous, they were never cataloged publicly. You managed to squeeze through a narrow service hatch. Not elegant, but effective. And inside, shelves, dozens of them, each crammed with volumes bound in materials you don't recognize. Leather, yes, but not always. Some feel almost waxy. Others bear no title, only numbers. Many are wrapped in red twine, like warnings. You reach for one labeled Canon and Versus. The spine cracks as you open it. The language is Latin but broken, reversed. Sentences that loop back into themselves. Some pages end halfway through a word and begin again upside down. It's not a book meant to be read. It's meant to trap attention. You feel it pulling your eyes, like the letters are shifting when you don't look. You set it down. Another book is different. Bound in silver thread, it's titled Evangelium Demonium, the Gospel of the Demon. You hesitate. This isn't medieval drama. It's real. The opening passage isn't a narrative. It's a ritual. Not a summoning. A conversation. Mainstream history acknowledges the existence of banned books, apocryphal gospels, early Gnostic texts, and heretical treatises like the Gospel of Judas. But these aren't apocrypha. They're anomalies. One tome is especially strange. Its pages are metal, thin sheets of etched lead, pressed together like a fan. The language is undecipherable, filled with symbols that resemble ancient Phoenician, but twisted as if passed through a mirror. Scholars call this mirror script, and versions of it appear in ancient alchemical texts, often associated with Isaac of Nineveh, Hermes Trismegistus, and, curiously, Saint Bede. Historians still argue whether these texts are the work of deranged monks or deliberately preserved records of a counterfaith, a hidden theology running parallel to the church. But if so, why preserve them at all? A small alcove draws your attention. Its walls are scorched, the stone discolored. At its center is a pedestal, empty. A small plaque reads, Liber Nocturni Voces, the Book of the Night Voice. Missing, or removed. Quirky note, in the early 1900s, a fire broke out in the Vatican archives, officially caused by faulty wiring. But unofficial logs show a number of forbidden texts disappeared that night. Some turned up in private European libraries. Others were never seen again. Rumor has it that one resurfaced during an auction in Prague, only to be purchased anonymously and vanished once more. You kneel beside the empty pedestal. A faint imprint of the book remains, its corners etched into the dust like a phantom. Then suddenly a whisper, not in your ears, in your bones, a wordless vibration, like breath across the back of your neck. You freeze. The air tightens. The room doesn't want you here anymore. Not because you're not worthy, because you've already seen too much. You stand, heart tight, throat dry. You back away from the shelves, not daring to touch another volume. These texts were locked away not because they were evil, but because they invited interpretation. And in a system built on certainty, the passage beyond is uneven, as though carved in haste. Not the graceful architecture of St. Peter's above, but something cruder, more utilitarian. Here, the Vatican wears a different face, one without gold leaf or liturgy. Just stone and silence. You follow it, deeper now than you thought the ground would allow. And suddenly, the walls widen. A new room opens before you. This one isn't holy. It isn't even neutral. It feels operational. On one wall, maps. Dozens of them. Geopolitical borders, troop movements, oil pipelines. Some are marked with dates: 1942, 1963, 1981. Others bear no years, just symbols. Triangles, cross keys, the all-seeing eye. And pinned at the center, a photograph, sepia-toned, curled at the edges. A priest, young, in military dress, holding a satchel marked with the papal seal. The caption reads, Opus V, Lituus Operativus. You've stumbled into a room most people don't know exists. The Vatican's intelligence chamber, a hub of eyes and ears, whisper and wire. Mainstream history tells us the Vatican is a spiritual authority, a religious capital. But behind the choir stalls and thuribles lies a network, one that spans continents, languages, and governments. From the Cold War to modern coups, the Church has always had interests. You scan the walls, diplomatic telegrams, faded microfilm cases, a chalkboard of ciphered codes, updated as recently as 2019. And beside it, a file drawer labeled simply Jesuit. The Jesuits, technically a religious order, but in Vatican corridors, they're referred to with a wink. Soldiers of Christ, yes, but also scholars, agents, mediators. If the Church needs something done quietly, they're the ones who disappear for months and return without questions. You open the file. Inside, photographs. Some grainy, others shockingly clear. A military official shaking hands with a man in priestly robes. The backdrop? Tehran, 1980. Another image. A group of school children with a smiling bishop, except there's a red circle around one child's face. Scribbled note, asset embedded / unknown awareness. Historians still argue whether the Vatican's geopolitical power peaked during the medieval era, but many now believe it merely evolved. Moved underground, hidden in plain sight. A document catches your eye. A speech transcript, never delivered. Drafted for Pope John Paul I. He died 33 days into his papacy. Heart attack, they said, but the speech? It outlines a new doctrine of transparency. Mention investigating Vatican Finance. Mentions removing certain individuals from power. Another file holds fragments of encrypted letters sent between cardinals, code names only. Shepherd 1, the quiet fingers smoke. One phrase is repeated, almost like a mantra. Lux non videt. The light sees nothing. Quirky side note, there's a rumor that during the Cuban Missile Crisis, a private Vatican channel passed messages between the US and USSR, bypassing both embassies. Some credit this quiet diplomacy with preventing a nuclear war. The Vatican neither confirmed nor denied the claim. You flip one last folder. It's newer, written in Italian. But you recognize one name typed at the top, Giovanni Ricciardi, a Vatican cryptographer who vanished in 2017. His last known assignment? Decryption of a mysterious manuscript labeled only P. Witnesses claimed he began to speak in languages he didn't know, and then went silent. He was found weeks later in a monastery garden, smiling, mute. You lean against the wall, suddenly exhausted. The realization is dawning. The Vatican. You leave the intelligence chamber slowly, as if turning your back on a creature that only pretends to be sleeping. The hallway narrows again, rough-hewn and ancient. Here, you can no longer tell whether you're beneath the Vatican or beneath something far older that the Vatican was simply built upon. The air becomes metallic, sharper. You pass alcoves, each one housing objects under glass. Meteorite fragments, carved bones, an astrolabe etched with constellations that don't match any known sky. And then you see it, a doorway flanked by 2 guards. Not living guards, statues again, but these are different from the angels above. They wear helmets shaped like suns. No eyes. Their armor is etched with symbols, stars, spirals, wings. Beneath them, a Latin phrase you don't expect to find in a Christian enclave. Ex astris scientia. From the stars, knowledge. You step through the arch and stop. This chamber is unlike any you've seen. No crosses, no suns. Instead, the walls are covered in star charts, scrolls pinned flat under glass, and strange artifacts, metallic, jagged, almost organic in form. You've entered the room whispered about in Vatican fringe circles, the alien archive. Of course, the church would never call it that. But historians and ex-theologians alike have speculated that the Vatican holds classified documents on unexplained aerial phenomena, long before governments did. You approach a display in the center. A long, flat sheet of metal, warped as if melted, except the burn marks pulse faintly under your flashlight. In one corner, someone has carved a phrase in Latin, et veni loquuntur in somnis. The visitors speak in dreams. Beside it, a scroll written entirely in what appears to be Latin, until you notice something wrong with the grammar. The sentences loop back on themselves. Subjects become objects, and a few glyphs don't belong in any human language. You realize this isn't Latin. It's meant to look like Latin. Mainstream scholars agree that the Vatican owns numerous reports on celestial events dating back to ancient Rome. Aurora borealis, wheels of fire in the sky, beings robed in light. But these documents, they go further. One parchment dated 1611 references a celestial vessel that hovered for 3 nights above the convent of Santa Maria del Grazie. Witnesses described a choir of sound without voices and a smell like the air before thunder. Nuns fainted. One reportedly disappeared. She was found a week later, speaking a dialect that no one, not even Vatican linguists, could identify. Another file bears only a Vatican seal and a single word, corpi. You open it slowly. Inside are anatomical drawings. Humanoid, yes, but not human. The proportions are off. Limbs too long. The skulls, delicate, with a second cavity above the brow. The notes are written in shorthand. But one phrase is underlined twice. No soul signature detected. You step back. Historians still argue whether the Vatican engages in actual extraterrestrial research. But the existence of the Vatican Observatory, the oldest active astronomical research institute in the world, has fueled speculation for decades. Some even believe its true mission isn't mapping stars, but watching something specific. In the far corner of the chamber, a case sits alone. Inside, a letter, signed Pope Sylvester II, dated 999 AD. Its contents? A description of a shining machine that came from the sky, gifted by a cloaked figure during prayer. The Pope wrote, "It whispered equations to me in dreams." Quirky footnote. Sylvester II was one of the most scientifically curious popes in history. Rumors swirled even then that he had struck a pact with a celestial messenger for knowledge. Centuries later, when his tomb was opened, his tongue was said to have turned silver. Your fingers twitch. This entire room is a contradiction, a clash between doctrine and the unknowable, between heaven and stars not found in any Bible. As you move to leave, your eye catches one last artifact, a small, circular object, burnished like... You step out of the alien archive with a tension in your spine you can't shake. It isn't fear exactly, it's adjustment, like your sense of scale just got permanently stretched. The kind of knowing you don't unknow, and the path ahead only darkens. The corridor turns again, and you notice a strange hum, almost imperceptible but rhythmic like breath or a distant engine. As you descend another narrow stair, torchlight flickers weakly along polished stone. But this level doesn't feel ancient. It feels engineered, and soon you see why. A room opens before you, smaller than the others, cold and clinical. No statues, no frescoes, just iron, wood, and parchment. A row of desks lines one wall, each with a lantern and a stack of folders. This is where paper becomes weapon. You've entered the Vatican's Papal Intelligence Registry. You almost expect security cameras, but there are none. Instead, high walls display intricately sketched maps of influence. Lines stretching from the Holy See to Washington, Moscow, Beijing, Nairobi. Names are listed. Faces sketched in charcoal, some crossed out, others highlighted, in red, and in the middle of the room, a large wooden chest, black, locked with 3 padlocks. On its surface, the crest of the papacy, and below it, in blunt carved letters, Operatio Umbra, Operation Shadow. You don't open it. Instead, you turn to the desk and open a folder. Inside, transcripts, interviews, not with diplomats or clergy, but with civilians, artists, engineers, scientists. One is labeled, Subject 17, Post-Vatican II Resignation Anomaly. It's a transcript of a woman claiming she was visited by a man in white in 1979 who gave her a sealed letter. She was told to burn it unopened. She didn't. Inside was a single Latin phrase and an emblem never seen before or since. Historians still argue whether Pope Benedict XVI's resignation in 2013 was truly voluntary. The Church insists it was due to age and health, but theories persist, especially given that the Vatican's own law had never allowed for papal resignation since 1415. You open a second file. This one is recent. A name, Father Arno Dlucca. He was last stationed in Argentina. The file contains email transcripts. His last message says, "I've seen the dream map again. It's updating. They're using it without knowing. I think we're all part of the field now." No response. You look up. On the far wall is a board with photographs, grainy, black and white. Most show people at lecterns in meetings on the street, but behind them, shadowy figures. Out of focus. Always the same height, same build. In every photo, the same entity. A small brass plate reads, Entity F, Non-Cardinales, Classification Pending. You move toward a locked drawer. It's labeled Prophetic Overlap, Level Delta. You pull it open. Inside are documents referencing ancient prophecies across different faiths, Revelation, the Zohar, Islamic hadiths, even obscure mind glyphs. The Vatican has highlighted parallels between them, not in their endings, but in their beginnings. One phrase appears over and over. The voice of heaven shall come from the earth. You pause. This isn't about just one religion. It's about patterns. One document is most disturbing. A printed analysis of collective dream phenomena. People across the globe seeing the same symbols. Keys, a serpent swallowing itself, a cathedral turned inside out. Vatican data suggests the trend began in 2008, peaked in 2020, then spiked again just last year. Quirky historical twist? There is a long-rumored internal Vatican project. You place the file back with steady hands, though your pulse betrays you. It's hard to read a word like you in a document not meant to be seen. And harder still to know, it was printed decades before you were born. The room grows quieter, as though your discovery has shifted the mood of the place. Not just in your mind, but in the walls themselves. As if the Vatican, no longer just a place, is beginning to notice you back. You step away from the intelligence desk and toward a narrow, half-lit tunnel that runs beneath the papal archives. It feels different down here, less polished, less planned. This part of the Vatican isn't meant to be navigated. It's meant to be forgotten. And yet, someone preserved it. You descend once more and enter a vault of stone and flickering oil lamps. The air is dry, stale with age, but not decay. This isn't a tomb. It's a repository. You find yourself in a crypt of forbidden books. But unlike before, these aren't just strange or dangerous texts. These are altered texts, versions of scripture, gospels, canon laws, written nearly identically to their public counterparts, with one crucial difference. They disagree. One codex, beautifully illuminated, begins like the Gospel of Matthew, but the genealogy diverges halfway through. Instead of tracing Christ through David, it moves sideways, naming a bloodline entirely excluded from traditional canon. And that line ends not in Galilee, but in Alexandria. You blink. Another book is even stranger, bound in red velvet, with a title you've never seen, Evangelium Mariam, the Gospel of Mary. Not the apocryphal text that scholars argue over, but a full canonical-style gospel with narrative parables, and miracles attributed to a woman known only as the Beloved. She teaches in parables. She speaks to the sea. She weeps not for sin, but for silence. And the most shocking detail, in this version, she is not a disciple. She is the teacher. You turn another page and read. And Peter said, "We have heard his truth through her, and it burns our ears, for we were not chosen to carry it." Historians still argue whether early Christianity included female spiritual leaders who were later erased from history. Some cite the Gnostic Gospels, others the oral traditions of the desert mystics. But here is a version of Scripture that treats Mary not as footnote, but as cornerstone. Another text begins like Genesis, but instead of "in the beginning, God created," it reads, "In the silence before breath, the world remembered itself." You set the page down slowly. The implications aren't just theological, they're metaphysical. A note tucked into this manuscript, handwritten in Latin, says, "This version is not incorrect. It is merely unspeakable." You sit for a moment beside the stone wall, breathing in the dust and centuries. The Vatican didn't burn these texts, didn't destroy them. It kept them, not for validation, not for belief, but for reference. One more shelf catches your eye. These texts are labeled simply Codex Rescriptus, palimpsests, books where older texts were scraped away and overwritten. But under the surface, you can still see fragments of forgotten ideas. One page seems to describe a cosmology of 9 heavens. Another shows a crucifix upside down, but not inverted maliciously. It's part of a diagram involving planetary conjunctions and lunar tides. You touch the edge of a vellum sheet and feel warmth. Faint but distinct. You flip it gently and uncover a phrase scrawled sideways across the margin. He said we would forget him. He did not say he would forget us. Your hands shake a little now, not from fear, but from recognition. You turn in place slowly. Where there was once a doorway, there is now only seamless stone. No seams, no hinges, just ancient wall, silent and absolute. You're not panicking yet, but your breath catches. The Vatican was built on layers. History stacked like sediment. But this feels like a reaction, as if the room itself has chosen to close. You scan the chamber again, and that's when you see it. A flicker in the far corner. Faint, flickering like a candle behind glass. You walk slowly toward it and discover a small brass plaque embedded in the wall, engraved with an eye surrounded by thorns. Underneath, 2 words in Latin, Adveniat silentium, let silence come. And just below the plaque, a stone panel slightly misaligned. You push. It gives. The panel slides open, revealing a tunnel unlike the others. It's narrower, more like a crawl space. The walls are bone white. The floor is salt. You hesitate, then drop to hands and knees. You move forward. This is no longer the Vatican you've known. This is older, colder, pre-theological. You crawl for what feels like minutes. Your hands burn from contact with the salt floor. Eventually, the space opens into a dome-like room, lit not by firelight, but by a strange ambient glow. The walls are covered in carvings, spirals, eyes, branches that seem to twist endlessly inward. None of them match Christian iconography. And then you see it, a monolith at the center. Tall, black, perfectly smooth. No inscriptions, no dust, just standing there like it has always been. You step closer. As you do, your ears ring. A sound with no pitch. A frequency your mind notices before your ears do. Not a hum, not a voice, a concept. And in that moment, you understand where you are. You've reached the Vatican's inner null. Not officially named, of course. This isn't on any floor plan, but whispered about in certain theological circles. A chamber that doesn't store anything. Instead, it erases. This is where things are brought to be forgotten. Not destroyed, just unwritten. You walk around the monolith slowly. Behind it, on the far wall, is a grid of drawers. Dozens of them, labeled with simple numbers. No dates, no descriptions. You pull one open. Inside, a silver cylinder. Sealed. No markings. You hold it for a second, and something shifts in your chest. Like a memory you never made is trying to surface. You put it down. Another drawer. A folded robe made of fiber that shimmers like water. A note tucked in the collar reads, "Return for mission. Identity unlocked." Another. A series of flat discs with what looks like music etched into them. But the notation spirals outward and the staff has no end. Historians still argue whether the Vatican engages in active removal of cultural knowledge, or whether it simply safeguards it from the world. But in this room, you begin to wonder if the truth is worse, that the Church collects absences, that it watches what shouldn't be, and intervenes before we know it existed. You step to the final drawer. It's different. No handle, but the monolith behind you hums louder, as if in anticipation. You press your hand against the drawer. It clicks open. Inside, a mirror. But when you look inside, your reflection isn't quite right. It moves slower. Its mouth twitches before yours. Its eyes know something. You stare longer than you should. And then the glass fogs from the inside. A word begins to write itself in the mist. "Remembrance, sir." You step back. You don't touch anything else. Quirky footnote. There's a suppressed Vatican text known only by those in rare linguistic circles, Codex Atramentum. No copies exist publicly, only whispers. It's said to contain black script that reads itself into your mind, and once known, can't be unremembered. Some believe this null room exists solely to contain its residue. You turn back toward the crawl space, but now it's closed. Of course it is, but a second opening has appeared, just behind the drawers. The stairs twist downward, their edges worn into softness by centuries of passage. Yet the stone dust is undisturbed. You're the first in a long time, or maybe the last of many. Either way, the Vatican below the null chamber feels different now. Not buried, not hidden, buried on purpose. The stairwell ends in a doorway, but this one isn't stone or wood. It's made from a strange blend of materials. Polished dark metal wrapped in softened leather, etched with faded symbols you don't recognize. There's no handle, only a simple indentation. You place your hand inside. A moment of pressure, like a heartbeat against your palm. The door opens sideways, silently, and you step into the most unexpected room of all. A library. A vast one, circular, domed, lit by soft blue flame sconces that cast no shadows. The shelves stretch impossibly high, carved from dark wood that seems to hum with tension. It's not the Vatican Library. It's not the secret archive. It's the index unwritten. You've read whispers, half rumors buried in footnotes. Some believe it's where the Church stores books that were never allowed to be written. Prophecies denied, histories reversed, futures that began but never finished. Each shelf is labeled not by title, but by intention. You walk past one, revelation without author. Another, the book Judas refused to write. A small book lies open on a reading pedestal. It contains a conversation between two unnamed voices. One of them insists time is circular. The other says, that is why we locked the circle. You turn the page and find only one line. If truth had a spine, we broke it here. Mainstream historians would scoff at this, of course. The idea of an unwritten archive seems absurd. But then again, this isn't history. It's resistance against chronology. You find another pedestal, housing a document titled simply Liturgy of the First Sound. The text is not in Latin. It resembles sheet music, but each note is paired with a word. As you read them aloud under your breath, your chest tightens, not in fear, but in memory. You know this somehow, like a melody heard in a dream. You stop reading. You keep walking. One alcove contains sealed jars with fragments of parchment, each one charred at the edges. The jar labels aren't in Latin or Greek, but in a pictographic language lost to archaeology. You recognize one of the symbols, the same spiral you saw behind the black monolith. Another shelf is labeled Redacted Prophets. One scroll lies half-burned, but a phrase survives. And she will come barefoot through the garden of bells, and the stones shall sing her name. No religion claims this line, but every major one echoes it. You pass a mirrored wall, not glass, polished obsidian, and written on it in ash, The books that are not written write themselves into men. You begin to understand. This archive isn't here to protect the church from knowledge. It's here to protect knowledge from the world. The truths here aren't just dangerous, they're loud. Too loud for minds that still think in centuries instead of spirals. Porky aside, one 18th century bishop named Lorenzetti reportedly wrote about an invisible library beneath the Vatican, where books arrive before they are written. His work was condemned, all copies burned, but a scrap survives in a private archive in Palermo. And it ends with this. I found a book whose final page described my own death. I did not turn it. You reach the center of the library. A single podium stands there. Upon it, a locked tome. Its title is untranslatable, composed of shifting characters that shimmer and rearrange when you look directly at them. But in your peripheral vision, you swear it reads your true name. There's no keyhole, no clasp, only a question carved into the podium itself. Are you ready to remember why you forgot? You do not answer, because something the back of your mind already has. You step back from the shifting book, careful not to make a sound, though you suspect it wouldn't matter here. This place doesn't respond to footsteps, it responds to thought. The library stretches infinitely behind you, but there's a second door now, tucked behind a bookcase that wasn't there moments ago. A narrow arch, carved with symbols like musical notes and blooming eyes. At the top, in delicate brown ink, Exodus Mentis, the departure of mind. You pass through. The space beyond is vast, open. Unlike anything you've seen below the Vatican, the ceiling disappears into mist. The floor is glass, or something like it, beneath which lie countless layers of buried texts, relics, and bones. You're walking on memory. This is the final vault. It's not organized like the other spaces. No shelves, no drawers. Just scatterings, relics half buried in stone. Books hovering inches above the floor, globes rotating on their own. In the center, a giant mural spanning an entire wall. You approach. It's painted in faded gold and iron oxide. And it tells a story. Not biblical, not historical, something else. At the far left, a black sun, surrounded by 12 beings, some human, some not. In the next panel, a seed is planted in the mouth of a statue. Then cities rise around it. Towers, bells, domes. And then, fire. Not flames, language that burns. Ribbons of script spiral through the sky. And everything beneath it begins to forget. In the final panel, a man writing a book alone in the ashes. A small flame hovers above the book. It looks familiar. You turn away. There's a bench before the mural. You sit, and in front of you, a figure. Not a person exactly, just a shape, hooded, lightless, standing across from you like it's been waiting. It speaks without mouth or motion. Do you know what you've seen? You don't answer. Not aloud, but something within you begins to stir. Images rise unbidden. The silver cylinder, the faceless angels, the glass that whispered your name, the spiral writing itself into the fabric of books before they're written. The figure continues. You believe this place is for secrets, but it is not. This place is for burdens. You feel the truth of that land in your chest like weight. It moves closer. The hood lifts slightly. There's nothing beneath, just a void, a silence that absorbs the question forming on your lips before it leaves your throat. You will return above, the figure says, but you must carry. Mainstream scholars argue endlessly about what the Vatican hides, but few ever ask what it protects us from. Fewer still wonder what it does with knowledge too heavy for history to hold. You stand. The bench behind you is gone. The mural now blank. The floor slowly begins to rise. You realize this entire space is an elevator. Not mechanical, but conceptual. You are ascending, not through stone, but through narrative. You see flashes through the glass floor. A scroll catching fire in reverse, unburning itself. The mirror fogging over, then clearing, showing a child's face. The glow blinking in perfect time with your heartbeat. And then darkness. When light returns, you're no longer beneath the Vatican. You're standing in the Sistine Chapel. Alone. No guards. No tourists. Just Michelangelo's ceiling gazing down, God reaching toward Adam, their fingers nearly touching. Except now, you notice something you never did before. In the corner of the ceiling's frame, a small symbol, an eye inside a spiral, painted so faintly it nearly blends into the plaster. You smile, not because you understand everything, but because now you know why you're not supposed to. Quirky echo from above. The air above ground feels lighter now, almost too light. Rome stretches before you, tourists laughing, the scent of coffee wafting from open-air cafes, scooter horns echoing through the alleyways. Life moves on as if nothing sleeps beneath it, but you know better. You walk slowly, each step like a reentry. Your mind swims with half images and sounds that don't have language. A weight presses in the back of your skull. Not pain, not pressure, just presence. You reach a quiet piazza. Pigeons scatter as you sit on a weathered stone bench beneath a fig tree. The fountain gurgles softly, innocent, normal, but your ears are still tuned to something else. Something still listening. You reach into your pocket and find something you didn't put there. A folded page. Smooth. Too smooth. You open it. It's blank. At first. Then, slowly, words begin to appear, not inked, but pressed, as if they've always been there, just hidden beneath the surface. We do not guard truth. We slow its arrival. You blink. The page crumbles to dust in your hands. And you exhale. You recall the faceless angel, the glass floor of memory, the Gospel of Mary, the mirror that knew your name, the whisper in the chamber of the erased, each moment still echoing, not with terror, but with quiet permission, as if the journey was never about uncovering secrets, but being ready to carry them. Historians will never catalog what you saw. Scholars will call it dream. Doctrine will deny it. But somewhere, buried deeper than time, the Vatican knows. And you're now part of its memory. Not a witness. A vessel. You rise from the bench. A child passes you, holding a balloon in the shape of a star. She smiles. You smile back. And as she disappears into the crowd, a voice, not yours, whispers in your mind. You remembered enough. You walk onward. No fanfare. No devain revelación. Just the sense that every door you walk past now knows your name. Maybe the world will never know what sleeps beneath the Vatican, but it doesn't need to. You do, and that is enough. Let fade now. The stone beneath your fingers softens. The voice is quiet. The locked rooms no longer press against your memory. The spiral corridors, the books that read themselves, the mirror that watched, let them dim like candlelight at dawn. You're no longer walking. You are drifting. Let each step you took beneath the marble bones of Vatican City dissolve like mist over the Tiber. Let the whispering pages close, one by one. The silver cylinder, the gospel of the beloved, the staircase that descended beneath silence. They're safe now, resting where no map can follow. Your breath slows. Your limbs grow heavy. There is no more door to open tonight. No more truth to carry. Let the monolith sleep. Let the names go. Let your reflection return to your own eyes. You're back in your room. The world outside is quiet. The air is soft against your skin. And somewhere far below, beneath Rome, beneath marble and memory, something ancient settles again into silence. Watching, waiting, not with menace, but with patience, as it always has. You are safe. You are small. And you are, perhaps, more complete than you were. Let the final symbol fade. Let your heartbeat fall into rhythm with the night. Sleep. Soft. Slow, steady. Sleep.